Gesundheit. Here we are again. It's Moped Outlaws time. That means it's Monday.
Yes.
Greg's almost over his cold.
I sure hope so, because it's been going for over a week now.
Yeah.
But I am Wednesday. I got my butt kicked. Wednesday, I was in bed. And it's
Have you
not
COVID
COVID,
tested?
everyone.
Yeah, good. Awesome. I'm so glad to hear
So
that.
let's keep in mind that there are colds, there are flus, people get sick, which leads us into our theme: committing to be a better me.
Right? There's so many layers to that. There's health, but there's behavioral
Yeah.
ones too.
Yeah.
Yep. And then
Mental.
and there's kind of a thing like you're always the best you can be, but just by the way it is. That's just it. Like nobody's
Well,
running around trying to be a shitty me. They're all
I
doing
don't
their
know.
best.
It's a great question. I don't know. I could say, like today, even I'm pondering, I don't think I'm doing my best.
Okay. So
I
you're
know I can
committed
do
to
better
being
than,
better.
right.
Yeah. The thing I was doing was kind of an existential game, which is that,
Right.
by virtue of the fact that you're whatever level you're at, that's your best, because anything else otherwise you'd be doing it better.
Right. And there's even in Course in Miracles, which you and I are both fond of, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think I could say that. Okay. So, it says the thing to do is nothing. There's nothing for you to do.
And comparing yourself to others and trying to establish that you're doing better or doing better than you ought to be or aren't doing what you ought to be.
Right. So part of what I'm comparing myself to is the imagined me in my mind. Like there's a me that I'm aware of that I'm not living up to, that I believe can be lived.
Yeah, it's aspirational, right? You have this sense of betterness, doing better, and it's across a bunch of different levels. It's physical fitness, it's mental fitness and health, and it's how we show up, how we behave, right? And those
Right.
are a reflection of how we're consciously entering into relationship with ourselves, habits, disciplines, practices, things like that. So from my point of view, I've got a much more consistent practice going. Like, not only am I doing my morning qigong and meditation stuff now, but all my journaling is getting done right on time. And it's funny because I set reminders on my phone, and I don't know how I did it, but I'm literally like the pings for my phone to go to journaling are going off just as I'm finishing the other thing. And I just nailed exactly how long it takes for me to do my morning practices and stuff. And then after journaling, there's my initiate's path homework, which includes the Course in Miracles, right? And all of it's just like flowing every day now.
Oh, that's awesome.
Well, yeah. And I have to. I'm at this point, I had a health scare. So that was my gift.
So do you think that's been the impetus that has
Well, I knew
motivated?
before.
Well, see, that's what I mean, though. Knowing didn't change your life.
Well, it did though, because I was doing a lot more of those practices than before, but
Yeah,
now
but
I'm doing even better.
what you just said to me is you had a 24-hour experience that changed your life. So yeah, I was doing better. 3 months go by. There's some incremental. You had a 24-hour experience, and now things have jumped to a whole new level.
Right. That's true. That is the truth.
Yeah, I just was watching Equator 2 last night, and It's actually a good movie. I'd never seen it from beginning to end. But he
I
has
don't
this
even know
one
what this
line.
movie is.
It's Denzel Washington, and it's an action movie. He's a badass,
Equator 2.
ex e- equalizer. I'm sorry. Did I say
Oh,
equator?
Equalizer. Okay, good. Got it.
Equalizer 2. Equator 2 is a coffee. No. um
Yeah, that's another thing
so
I'm doing that I'm not doing.
so anyway, but he said there's two kinds of pain, the kind that hurts and the kind that changes you. I was like, oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what, in a way, I think we're touching on, like that 24-hour experience you had is the kind of pain that changes you.
Yeah,
And it
I'm
wasn't
not. I want to say that I agree with the premise you're making, and I didn't experience any pain.
right. But what you did experience is emotional pain, I'd say. And pain is semantics. But what I'd believe is for 24 hours, your reality was challenged.
And how? No question. Yeah.
Yeah. So in that period, like you could say that's a painful experience to have one's reality challenged.
Yeah. And I want to just be clear, I was under no pain. It was
Right.
the exact opposite. What I experienced was actually weirdly relief. But made me think, because there was this stuff that happened that was completely out of my control. I had no control over it. I wasn't in pain. I didn't feel scared. Like, it was just this moment where this whole new opportunity opened up before me, and it was just
Right.
stupid not to jump on the bandwagon to move forward to the next level.
So that is so interesting. So part of, because I was talking with Robin this morning, my daughter, and I asked her, like, to be a better me, what do you think I need to do? Because I've been pondering this. So, and she had a real great answer. She said, well, what did you like to do as a kid?
I love that. I think that's really helpful. Play more, get more exercise. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I'm
Yeah.
I'm down with
And
that.
yeah. And also, like, I was like, oh, yeah, I liked acting and pretending.
Yeah. And
That was
riding
my
our
thing. I was like,
bikes.
oh,
Riding our
yeah.
bikes and
Yeah.
skateboarding, and
Yeah.
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now I'm pondering that, like, I might have to make some serious shifts in my life. And I've also been thinking about one of our friends who's the DO. What's that? Doctor of Othenio.
I
What
would have
is
been
that
able to
doctor?
say it if you hadn't started saying the wrong
And
thing.
fucked it up. Anyway, so there's a lot of scientific medical data.
Osteopath.
Osteopath. All right. So there's a lot of medical and scientific data coming out about one's emotional vibe and the heart intelligence and, like, our vibrations, and that they are influenced by those around us, and we influence those around us.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. And that film, I mean, I think we've talked about this before. The film I Am talks about that when he goes to the Center for this Studies of Heart Coherence, and they do this thing where they actually measure the electromagnetic output of the heart. So as we're getting into this place, a lot of us around New Year's do this. Like, we want to have the better result, which is basically about feeling better about ourselves, right? And being able to create the things we want to create that do that. Now, a lot of people refer to them in terms of the term resolutions. And I think at our meeting on Monday, we decided let's avoid that kind of thing, because that everybody's talking about what are resolutions, right? But I think that the feeling, the desire to have a new possibility emerge, it's pretty universal, even if you're already like swinging for the home run line. If you're like, you got 8-pack abs and you're killing it financially and you got a great relationship and children and all the things, there's still a level beyond that for us to grow into. And that's, I think, is a really sweet thing about life, is the realization when we reflect on where we are, no matter where that is, there's always a new possibility for us to create. Things are perfect, and there's a possibility for me to do more, right? Things are good the way they
Yeah,
are.
and I
And
guess that's part, like, I'm just thinking of someone like Jeff Bezos, and everything you just said, he's got, he's got the 8-pack. He's fucking financially off the planet, literally. um, he's got a smoking hot girlfriend. And if that trait is a human trait, that there's always the impetus to fulfill oneself better. Like I was just saying earlier, I imagine a better me that's plausible to live. And so
well,
part of it is character traits and decisions, like what is better,
you said the words fulfill a better self, right? And
right.
there's something in there that I think is interesting because a piece of this has to do with ego. And I think it's actually important to dismantle that piece because there's something else there that's more valuable to us as individuals and to our collective culture. So when we get past the kind of egoic pieces of our appearance, of how we appear to others, what, like, we just nailed it. Like I said 6 packs and money and all those things, which are, what we use to validate our value, right? But the truth is, the deeper piece isn't about any of that. It's about our relationship to ourselves and how we feel about ourselves, and then how we show up in relationship with others. So we do this thing where winter, especially in the northern hemisphere, we come to this place of self-reflection, where we look at ourselves and we assess, like, where do I want to be, what do I want to have going better, and how, and then we get to the why. And I think that's where the ego either comes in or doesn't come in. Because if the why is about how we look to other people, or the way that we measure ourselves against some kind of social construct of what it means to be healthy, wealthy, and wise, then we get trapped in that comparison thing again. But when we actually self reflect about what we want for ourselves, there's a deeper place to go to, right? And for me, I'll just be really obvious and explicit here. I need to lose weight, and it's not a it's a significant amount. It's not like, we're not talking 25 pounds here. And the byproduct of that desire might be that I look more acceptable or attractive to my partner or to other people. But the ultimate source of the desire is, and the power that comes through when I need to do the things I need to do that, and have the willpower to avoid certain things and then to actually engage in certain things, is because of how I want to feel physically, right? How I want to experience my reality, in the sense of, being able to walk further up the hill, or, bend over easier, or all of the things that get in my way about being heavy. So that actually feels like a much better motivator for me, because it's about my own experience. It's not about my value to someone else. And that's the podcast.
Well, one of the questions we had when our meeting Monday was, what are we distracting ourselves from?
Right. Yeah.
So this thing with your weight, I've known you to be a big man the whole time I've known you.
Yeah, but the definition of what that meant was different, I think, when we were in our 20s. Like in our 20s, I maybe was 5, 7, 8 pounds overweight, right? But I still had that same, it feels exactly the same. My self judgment feels exactly the same as it did then.
See, that's what I'm wondering is, like you've talked to me about with money and the thermostat, and unless I'm able to change my inner thermostat in regards to finances, it's always going to reset at what I believe
Hmm.
my financial
Your
value
set
is,
point.
or my set point, right? That seems, if that's real, then that's real for everything. So even with your weight, part of what you're transforming is your idea of who you are.
Exactly. Totally. Yeah, it's not just changing a habit. It's becoming a different person.
Right. And are you
And
willing to become a different person?
not only am I willing, I'm avidly seeking out all of the paths that lead me there.
Because remember, I think it was last podcast you talked about people who are in this spiritual vortex and it just whirls around and there's nothing really there. It just doesn't have any roots and depth to it.
Hmm.
So that can happen with weight and body image, where, all these diet plans and all this change of food and apps and everything, but there's no real transformation unless, and that's kind of the piece where I think you were just referring to earlier with ego, and that piece that's deeper, like something deeper. And for me, like I go into this shadow, this sort of dark void where I'm like, "Ooh, there's nothing there."
Well, there's a reason we distract ourselves, and there's usually a kind of dual reason there. One is whatever we have to face about ourselves that we're confronting in desiring a personal transformation is there. And then there's the idea of just pleasure being a distraction, and not having to do any hard work, not having to engage in the activities that will change the dynamic. So, you know, one could say that it's physical, and that what I need to do is physical in terms of how to shed the weight I want to shed. But the reality is it's actually emotional, right?
Well,
And I have to clear the emotional things that have me wanting to distract myself with food pleasure, right? Because my body will ultimately use the calories I give it. And if I give it too many, then I'm going to continue to store it. Now, there's other issues here, but I think in the framework of why we distract ourselves and how that impacts our ability to become the person we want to become, there's this thing called the cybernetic mechanism in our brains that keeps us in our comfort zone. Now, the problem with that comfort zone is that if you're fat like me, that's not the place to stay. And so when you start to get outside of that, there's all of these triggers that can happen that have you resort to the old behavior. And so being confronted with that difficult self-assessment can cause emotional difficulty, and then that can be the impetus or the excuse, depending on you're looking at it, for the distracting behavior. Now, food's just one aspect of it. Like I used to distract myself a bunch of other ways, right? And I've been slowly whittling them down, and I noticed what happened for me. Like there was a point where I was actually at my goal weight for almost a year, and then I started slipping back into my old distractions to try and navigate the emotional work that I didn't want to do, to try and suppress the emotions. And it's ultimately, comfort food is about numbing. Alcohol is about numbing, even emotional distance is about money numbing, not having to
Money.
numbing.
But and I just want to say though, there is the ability to have pleasure in like a great chocolate truffle
I totally agree. I totally
dessert.
agree. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't have those things, or that, you know, that can't even be part of a healing journey around food.
Right. Like I think The Rock has a great physical regime in his life. He seems to be, and he's broadcast his cheat nights where there's chocolate chip cookies and piles of waffles and whipped cream and all sorts of stuff. And he's got a physical regime that is tight.
Yeah. So what I've done in the last 6 days is I've upped my game there. But in terms of, like, if we were to look at it as a spectrum of where I need to be in order to achieve the result I'm getting at, I'm not outputting that at that level yet on a consistently on a daily basis. But what I am making is my 30 minutes a day goal. Right. And so what I've got is 30 minutes a day consistently for the last 60 days of, walking or biking. And the next thing is I'm ordering my jump rope. So I'm going to do two. I'm going to do a thing in the morning and a thing in the afternoon.
All right. So you wanted some accountability in that?
Hell no.
Ah,
No, I'm joking when I say that, sort of.
I hear you. We're laughing.
So,
Yeah. So is that a yes? By next
yes,
episode, episode 31,
I'll have ordered my
you'll
my
have a
jump rope.
jump rope.
Yeah,
You'll
because
have a jump
Amazon.
rope. Not
Yeah,
just ordered, you'll have it in hand.
I will. I'll
That
find a way
gives
to
you
make that happen.
7 days.
Yeah, that's nothing. I should have it long before then.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. And so now we need an accountability element that if you don't have it, you got to create the graphics for episode 32.
Oh God.
Yeah.
In some ways, creating the graphics would be easy. Like, but I hear you. Like, what I'm saying
How
is, I
about
don't
it?
actually have an aversion to creating the graphics, so that it. But I
Oh,
get it. Like,
your oh God didn't wasn't like okay. You were like, oh, that's an easy out. Your response was, oh God.
I thought this was going to be about us, not about me.
It was. It is about us.
I
It's our
suddenly feel
graphics.
I feel very exposed.
Well, you're fucking on the accountability pinnacle.
I am, and I'm
And you know
I'm
what's
happy.
interesting?
I'm crying tears of
Um,
joy right now.
I will say, like, this is part of what brings up is I had agreed to have a website done for community reusables that I'm in partnership with Molly. And
Yeah.
I didn't have it done. And I got sick. And I kept saying, I fucking was sick. He's like, I don't care. You said you'd have it done. There was a deadline. And she's right. And part of what I'm thinking about with Robin is maybe I'm not committed to community reusables in a partnership way. Because if we were making a movie, I'd fucking have it done. Wouldn't care.
Well, I think this brings up an important point. Like, there's a point at which healing from sickness is a reasonable thing to delay a project. And there's a point at which it isn't, right? And
Well,
so
it's
I
the
don't agree with
passion.
your partner about.
It's the passions. It's the passions. If you're passionate about something, you do it.
Well, the thing is, the
And
cold and the cough didn't stop you from being consciously awake and clicking your keyboard. So you could have done
it
it.
actually did. I went to bed.
Right. All right.
But
So,
that's part of it. And I do add, okay, like, and we're not done with the accountability and the jump rope. Don't worry.
No, I
But I
accept your
also,
accountability. Like that, we're gonna. It's 7 days to get it, and then we're gonna talk about how often I do it,
all
and we don't have
right.
to talk about that and bore our listeners with my jump roping schedule. But I'm sure
Well,
it'll come up.
we'll know, like, yeah, by episode 31,
Yeah, if I need a
if you
second
have a
knee
jump.
brace, that I've probably started jump roping.
Well, you better own a jump rope. You better show it to the camera. Here it is, right here.
Okay,
Otherwise, you're making graphics for episode 32.
you mean
All
20?
right,
Yeah, done deal. I
32.
agree.
All right. So, yeah, because we're talking about community reusables. Oh, being sick, the passion.
Well, you were saying that you felt like you were
Oh, I
called
know what it
out
was.
correctly by your
Yeah,
partner.
no, here's a couple of days ago I realized that I'm addicted to video games. And when that thought flashed through my mind, because I've been pondering like a better me, what is it? And when that thought, excuse me, I need a cough button. Um, I just realized I have a cough button. Duh. Um, Everyone's yelling at me. Zoom has mute, Wilker, you fucknut. So anyway,
I didn't even
um,
think you could hear my thoughts.
well, there was all the people inside there yelling in unison. Um, so when that thought hit my brain, I'm addicted to video games, I felt this panic. It was split second, microsecond of life. But I was like, oh, that's real. All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So I'm assessing that. Well, that's a fucking weak thing, assessing that. All right. So I'll have some accountability.
You know what you by the way, you have a mute button. Um for those
That's
of
me
you,
holding up my middle finger.
what occurred to me was it'd be great if you could put like a lockbox on your video game player and you had to put money in it every time you wanted to play. So that at the end of the day, like or the end of the week, every time you played, you'd have saved a little money.
I think it's just stop doing it because the two devices I use three devices: my phone, iPad, and my desktop computer.
Yeah. So these are the things that we distract ourselves with. Video
Right. So
games,
that's a
food.
yeah,
Some people use weed, alcohol, sex,
sex.
yeah, politics. Like people distract
Some people
themselves with
use
politics.
physical activity,
Well,
you know.
yeah,
Some people use physical health to avoid things.
right, because that's actually a good thing ultimately. It's still
Well,
a distraction, but
it's
if the
not a
thing
good thing if you say to your partner, oh, I really can't talk about it right now. I'm going to go work out. And that just keeps happening, keeps
right,
happening.
I agree. I agree. Right.
So, yeah. So, all right.
So do
Video
you need some
games.
accountability around video games, Greg?
Be wise. I don't think I need it, but I'm for it.
What does it mean to be addicted?
Fucking mute button is so far away, and I guess I could do it like this. Are you hearing me fine right now?
Yeah.
All right.
What does it mean to be
Hi,
addicted?
people.
What does it mean to be addicted?
It means doing it to the detriment of other things important to me in life.
Okay. Say more about impulse control.
What do you mean?
Have you ever done a 12-step program?
I've attended some Al-Anon stuff.
Right. So what's the first step?
I don't know. It's been so long. I was in my
Admitting we're
20s.
powerless over this thing. So addiction means you don't have the ability to govern yourself about it.
All right, so I don't believe that's true. I do believe I have the ability to govern myself. I just haven't acted on it.
Okay. Ultimately, there's a book called A Million Tiny Little Pieces, which is about this absolutely about this discussion. There's a guy who says he quits heavy duty alcohol and drug abuse cold turkey. He doesn't use the 12-step method. He won't go to the 12-step meetings, and he just quits. And he quits really successfully for a long period of time, and he ends up writing this killer book. And then he gets Oprah Winfrey brings him on her show and has his book be part of the Oprah Book Club. And then people find out that he relapsed and that he was full of shit. And so there was this huge backlash about the idea that he did it without, any. But he did it for a long time. And I think there's a really potent thing. There's this moment where you just decide this isn't happening anymore. And what happens after that is some people can stick to that and some people can't. And so people who
Yeah,
can't, they need accountability. And that's what NA and AA and all these things are.
yes, I agree. Um that reminds me of Devil's Advocate, that movie with Keanu Reeves and Al Pacino. Did you ever
Hmm.
see that?
I think I've seen it a couple times.
Yeah, I
Stoned, so
love
I don't
that, how
remember
at the
much.
very end, he just goes right back into it after everything he had been through and finally freed himself. And he just goes right back into it. And the devil turns to the camera like, that's what I love about human beings. They're just so fucking easy.
Yeah. 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 So here we are. You and everyone listening, we're on the cusp of a new possibility for ourselves. The question is, what do you want and what are you willing to do to make it happen? Who are you willing to become in order to shift that reality? What distractions are you willing to give up?
How uncomfortable are you willing to be to get there?
Right. Staring at that video game.
Staring at the wall and it's far too big. You'll be staring at the wall and it smells like a pig.
Those are the lyrics that he's referring to from a band that Greg and I used to belong to called Death Jester, which was a death metal parody band that actually predated the most famous one,
Spinal Tap.
Spinal Tap.
I don't know. Didn't Spinal Tap come out in like 80,
No, we beat them. We
1980?
were like a year and a half ahead of them, and then they came out.
Really?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Because I remember feeling really disappointed when I saw them and going, oh, well, someone's already done it.
Did you go to the show that they did at the Warfield?
Oh, I think so. I barely remember like the end big bottom with all the bases coming out.
Yeah, you were there. All the girls from the O'Farrell Club.
Yep.
That was awesome. That was
Yeah.
such a good show. That was
Yep.
so fun.
Yep. Back when being a rock star was still considered reasonable behavior.
And their tweaker folk band opened for him. Remember that
Oh,
with
no.
their hit album "Break Like the Wind"?
Oh, that's right. Now I remember. Yeah. Ay, ay, ay. Well, feels like we covered this subject, huh, Greg?
I think let's stop.
All right, let's do it.